Hi everyone. My name is Kayver De Leon. I am a psychologist from Child from Possibility Psychosocial Services. Welcome to this webinar entitled Psychological Preparedness to Transition Back to Work After Quarantine. This is one of the 12 webinars we have availed up in the CLiC Resilience Building webinar library. Now, the whole vision for this webinar is really to help people mentally prepare themselves for the many changes we are expecting as we go back to work. Now, I understand that all of us are dealing with different contexts. Some of us, for example, are coming back to work after telecommuting. So during the quarantine, some of us have worked from home full time, but now we are being asked to report back to site. Sometimes that reporting is really on a part-time basis or on a rotational basis, but at times we are being asked to report on site on a more permanent basis. For other people, there's really no break from the quarantine to the regular work that they do. So you have frontliners who have reported to their work sites and really are just dealing with the changes, the many different demands of safety, health, and the other concerns that are being dealt with because of this pandemic. So the webinar now is really about them coming to terms with this being something long term, that the changes that they thought was temporary during quarantine was actually something that they would have to do for maybe at least a year because we don't know how long this situation would last. And all of this takes a toll on our mental health. There are a lot of adjustments that needed to be made. And for some people, adjustments are easy. But for others, it's really something that needs a lot of constant attention and a lot of self care. And that is the purpose of this webinar. So I hope that you would learn something from it. And really, our thought is just for you to create skills and practice skills that you can use so that we can be more adjusted as we go along. So to formally start, I'd like to give an overview of what we'd like to talk about in this webinar. So in this webinar, we are hoping to introduce you to factors that contribute to readiness too, and not just readiness, but actually competence in managing change. So discussion includes tips on how you can mentally prepare yourself for the new normal. So of course there are the health preparations and there are the safety preparations, but we're going to talk about how you can protect yourself psychologically from the stressors that would come from the changes that are to come. We would also talk about how we can minimize adjustment problems and how we can embrace change. Now, embrace really can be something daunting for everyone. And maybe some will start with just really accepting that the change is there. But our hope is as we go along, there is something of an openness that will come up to the new normal. Doesn't say that we like it. It doesn't say that we didn't wish that this isn't happening, but maybe there is a way to make it work, and maybe we can thrive and even get better and enhance our personalities as we go through the differences that we are about to expect. Now, before we go to the cognitive part of our webinar, I would like to start with a little temperature check. This is just a reflection. Now, I'd like you to sit there as you're listening and really look at yourself. Check what you're feeling, check what you're thinking, and from this way, we could understand where everyone is coming from. Now, as we do this temperature check, remember that there are no right or wrong answers. So, what you feel is what you feel, what you're thinking is what you're thinking. And really, our end is just for you to non judgmentally accept what is happening so that you could better understand how to move forward. All right. So, the first question in our temperature check is on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the highest, how would you rate your anxiety about working in this new normal? When we speak about anxiety, it's not really a disorder. This is a normal feeling that everyone has when they are faced with a situation that is uncertain and even potentially dangerous. So, anxiety is merely our body's way of preparing ourselves and making us focus our attention on a possibly threatening situation. So, think about that on a scale of 1 to 10. How strong is your anxiety? You can pause this video so that you could really reflect about it, and you can even get a pen or paper so you can jot down your notes. Right. So a second question that I'd like you to think about is how would you rate your psychological readiness to resume work? Now, how you would define psychological readiness would be up to you. So it's really just about this whole willingness. No, are you excited to wake up and to go to work? Or do you have reservations? Do you have fears? No, do you have concerns? And if this is something that's going to be asked for you for a long term, no, the changes that are about to happen, how prepared do you think you are to navigate those changes? You can also list down your top three concerns as you resume work post quarantine. Are there things that you'd like to change in yourself, the management of the company to change in the company, or even in just the situation? No, there are worries that you have concerning the whole situation that we're facing. But also, as important, I'd like you to reflect what are your top three strengths for coping with the new normal? When we talk about strain or stress, no, it's also as important to think about what have we been doing so far that's working. Because even if you say that you are stressed out or burned out or overwhelmed by the situation that we're in, you have survived thus far. And so there is something that you're doing right. No? And it's just really a matter of thinking about how we can do more of it and how we can affirm ourselves for the good job that we have been doing, even though not everything is perfect. And this is an important thing as well. So, right, what you will do with this temperature check is just to really look at it so that you can see what are the areas of affirmation and what are the areas that we need to develop as we go further along. I want to start the webinar proper by a quotation from a philosopher, Socrates. He said, "The secret of change is to focus all of your energy not on fighting the old, but on building the new." This is a powerful quotation because it's actually telling us that many things may have happened that we don't like, but to a certain extent, while it's important to process what's happening and what has happened, it's also as important to be open to something different, something new. Um, this is especially true if the change is irreversible, as what is happening now. This is true if the change is inevitable, which is what we have now. We could waste a lot of energy blaming who we think should be blamed, or procrastinating because we are scared, or wondering and asking questions and ruminating about what ifs and what could have beens. But there's really something non functional about that. Sooner or later, we have to build something new. Build is really the word because it would take a lot of work and we may have to start from scratch. I wouldn't be surprised if some of the companies that you're with are reorganizing or even changing their product offerings or changing the whole nature of the business. Because a lot of things have changed and many things that we'd like to do no longer applies. So the hope, the feel, no, the ethos of this webinar is really how do we go forward? How do we move forward? And how do we have that building mentality, that start from scratch mentality that we have and still be happy even if the process would take a long time? Okay. Let's just go briefly on this. No, we do know that the COVID-19 pandemic is a great disruptor. We know that it has changed a lot in our way of doing things. It has changed, of course, first and foremost, our health and security. So no longer do we feel safe because there's still no cure and no vaccine. Whenever we are interacting with another person, or even if we're just touching surfaces or things that are around us. So there is now a pervading sense of insecurity and anxiety about our health because it could affect anyone and we can't predict how it would affect us. Some people, if they do catch the illness, would probably be all right and be asymptomatic. Other people will have more serious repercussions. So, this health and security issue is felt even more by vulnerable populations, such as young people and the elderly, and those who are immunocompromised. So, we do have that change, and it has disrupted the way that we think about our health. For sure, it has disrupted our mobility. So the quarantine has imposed on us restrictions on where we should go, how often we should go, um, who should go. Even though we want to do something as simple as go to the grocery, perhaps we're not even the person assigned to do that. So we are being asked to limit ourselves to our homes, and we are being asked to think carefully whether or not our journeys are necessary or not. So it took a lot of our freedom to decide how to move about in everyday life. For sure, it has disrupted the economy. We do know that it's not just the Philippines, but even um, previously affluent nations who are struggling now with how to get the economy moving. Because without movement, without commerce, with the quarantine in place, even if you have business, even if you have money, it's unlikely that it's going to generate income because everything is on a standstill. And because everything is interchanged, you have suppliers and you have companies, you have mother companies overseas. So what happens overseas affects what happens here, and vice versa. The way of life, for sure, because now we have to wear masks when we go out. Now we have to be careful about touching someone. We cannot shake hands. We cannot just be affectionate as we used to. And we have to think a lot more about how we could protect ourselves and our families. And for some families, sadly, the COVID-19 disrupts life itself. So we do say our condolences for the people who have lost loved ones because of this disease, and people who have loved ones who are struggling right now, probably confined in emergency care. And that in itself is a big, big stressor that we have to deal with.